Thank you everyone for joining me again. If you've stuck it in through the first video on the actual server installation and AD install as well. And especially thank you if you've watched the bonus video on how to do the exact same thing in the server core install. So we're going to continue this Microsoft Identity Manager series and move on to exporting from production and importing into the Sandbox. And then we're going to start installing our prerequisites of SQL 2016 and SharePoint 2016. We might even get to configuring SharePoint 2016 as well. So in the meantime, in between these videos, what I've done is all in the production environment, I have created some random accounts to represent staff and contractors at both main sites and remote sites. I've also created some groups, managers, things of that nature. I've also extended the schema on the production AD server. I've extended it for the Exchange 2016 install. Now, I did nothing to the Sandbox. I haven't touched it. But I think it's important to take a look at how we deal with an extended schema from a Sandbox to production, because most likely you're a live production domain controller is going to be around, has been around for a while. And if you have Exchange on-prem at any point, and I've been reading some things about extending the schema for Office 365 even, Exchange Online. But anyways, that's here nor there. But how is that going to work if you have a freshly Sandbox AD install and you're trying to import attributes that aren't even in there? You're not going to want to go in and create each of those. You're not even going to want to go in and extend the schema. I mean, because if you've had Exchange since, I don't know what the earliest version is, but if you had Exchange for a while, you may have had to extend the schema for each of those versions. I haven't followed the versions, so I'm not 100% sure how much the schema has changed between builds. But we're going to take a look at that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm on my production machine. And all I'm going to do is actually show you that I have extended the schema. So all I'm doing here is pulling the schema version, Exchange schema version attribute. And I will flip over and do the exact same thing to the production environment. Okay, so as you can see, there is no MS Exchange schema version in our Sandbox environment. So, okay, how are we going to deal with that? Well, first off, we actually need to get the schema out of our production environment, and that could be a trick in and of itself. But if you're kind of familiar, I think it's been integrated into Server 2008, a command called LDIFDE. It is, and I'll go ahead and type it out here for you. So LDIFDE has been around in the base installation of server since, I think, 2008. It was previously, I believe, available in the administrator tools or the server toolkit. Anyways, what it stands for is LDAP, Data Interchange Format Directory Export. It's a mouthful, yes. it's a directory export for LDIF files. Now, if you go look up some LDIF files, it's actually not a Microsoft thing. It's more of a, dare I say, an open standard. I haven't done that much research into it, but I know it's not just a Microsoft thing. But LDIFDE is just their tool to interface with Active Directory and Atom. That's actually what we're going to be using. So the first thing we need to do is, well, as I said before, we just need to export our schema out here. And with a simple command, it shows how simple it is. Actually, I'm going to change directory here. So I will be in the right directory, so it'll be easy to find. So we'll do our LDIFDE. I'll just hit that so you can kind of see what it's looking for. It's not a PowerShell command. Even though I am running it inside of PowerShell, it's not a PowerShell command. It's an actual executable. So there's a couple switches in here. So we need to export to a file. I'm just going to call that prod schema. And then LDIF is the extension. And then we have to tell it the base DN of what we want to export. And that's going to actually be the schema. Now remember, this is in the production.local domain. So we'll just hit export. Or just hit enter, excuse me. So I can tell that this schema has been extended because I think for a default AD install, there's about 1,200, give or take, entries. So yes, this definitely has been extended. So we have a file. So let's go ahead and open it up. So that's what the LDAP data interchange format file looks like. It basically has all the attributes from the schema container in our domain. So let's go ahead and close out of that notepad, and I'm going to jump over to our Sandbox environment. So we're going to be using a tool, we're going to be using a tool called AD Schema Analyzer. You thought I had some nifty PowerShell way of comparing. No. We're using this ADDS/LDS Schema Analyzer. It's actually a part of Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services. So that is, you can install it on a Windows 10. It's a Windows feature. You can install it, and you'll receive this exe in the, and I don't have the directory on this machine, on our Sandbox machine, but I'll show you where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be in this C Windows Atom folder when you install the Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services feature. You can just, what I just did is I had it on my Windows 10 machine, installed ADDLS, and copied this over and then removed the lightweight directory feature because I didn't need it. So we'll just go to File, and we're going to say we're going to load our target schema. And our target schema, actually, we're going to go over on the network and jump into the C hidden share, users, administrator, desktop. There's our prod schema file. I'm going to copy that to the local machine. And now I'll say load LDIF file. And we're just going to point it to this LDIF file that was spit out for us. So this gives us a nice little breakdown of attributes, classes, and property sets that were in this file. So there are quite a bit. You can expand these and view every single one of the attributes and every single one of the classes. We'll do something similar here in a second. So now we need to load our base schema. Our base schema is going to be the AD that we're wanting to import into, which is our production environment. So this is where we'll enter in I said production environment. I meant Sandbox. So this is where we'll enter in our Sandbox domain controller with our username and password. And then we'll say OK. Now it's going in and it's comparing everything. Now it's actually fairly quick. So we'll go ahead and expand this. What does this mean? Well, there's some gray check boxes and then some unchecked boxes. The gray check boxes mean that both of the files, the gray check boxes mean your base schema, the schema that you're wanting to import into, have these attributes already. So you can go through and look, or you can go up here to this schema and say had present elements. This is only going to show what is not already existing. So if we go down through here, we should see, here we go. We're already starting to get into some of the exchange attributes. So now all we need to do is say mark all non-present elements as included. So there's 2,757 elements that Exchange 2016 creates. That's interesting. So we'll just go ahead and say file and say create LDIF file. And I'm just going to name this missing schema attributes. There's more than attributes, but I'll just call it that. Okay, so now we're finished with the schema analyzer. We'll jump over into PowerShell. We're going to run this as administrator. You can jump into command prompt if you like, but I'm used to PowerShell, so that's where I'm going to go. And we're going to use the LDIF directory export. But before we do that, I just realized we might want to open up that missing schema file. There's something very, very curious in here. If you look at the DNs, everything's looking normal until you get to DN equals X. That's what the schema analyzer does, so you can easily rename the domain that it's coming to, that you're importing into. So if you try and import this file as it is, it's going to blow up. If you try and import the production schema as it is, it's going to blow up, because your base domain controllers are not going to be the same. Unless you've, by chance, named the Sandbox the exact same as your production, which would get very confusing in my opinion. But this is something to note. So, well, how are we going to get around that? Well, thankfully, Microsoft thinks of everything. So there is a -I that's going to signify, hey, we're importing a file. Or excuse me, -I is saying we're importing. -F is saying we're using this file, which is missing schema attributes. And then there's a nice little command, nice little switch in here. A -C. This -C will replace a from DN with the to DN. So, very simple. Let's do this. DC is equal to X, and then we're going to name it. I'm going to put these in quotes since I'm in PowerShell. We're going to name it DC Sandbox DC Local because that's what our domain is. So we're going to hit enter. So while it's importing here, this tool was actually developed for cross-forest schema management. So it's a nice little tool that we can use it for actually production and Sandbox comparisons. Okay, so here we go. We've imported everything. So all I'm going to do is go all the way up to the top and run this command again. Now we actually have this attribute, MS Exchange schema version. Now, if I were going to install Exchange in this Sandbox environment, I would actually extend it with the setup executable. But all I'm needing to do is have attributes that store values so I can show you that yes, FIM can sync these values. If we were going to include Exchange, there would be more configuration that I would actually do. Okay, so our schemas are synchronized, so to speak. The next thing we need to do is synchronize our users. Before we go in to or back to our production environment, let's jump over to AD here. Before I get too far, I'm going to do view and advanced features. Okay, so we'll just expand. So the only OU we have are the domain controllers, is the domain controllers OU. Everything else is a container, of course. So the users container contains 24 objects, so groups and users. And let's just browse through here. There's my domain controller, and there are no computers in here. There are about 29 more groups, and everything else are advanced items, configurations, and different things in AD. But I wanted to do the view advanced features because we're going to actually be taking a look at the attribute editor. Okay, so now let's jump over to our production environment again. And we're still going to be hovering around the LDIF directory export tool. But before I do that, I want to do a get AD. Now let's do get AD organizational unit first. And we'll do an asterisk on the filter. And that display is a little ugly, so I'm just going to select the distinguished name. So I have 9 OUs in here. I have my domain controllers, and I also have the main office and remote office in the root of production. And then inside of main and remote office, I have staff and contractors each, as well as a groups OU. And I have an underscore before that, and I'll show you the reasoning when we actually get over to the GUI. So let's take this, let's do this, get AD user, and we'll do a filter of an asterisk, and then we'll select the distinguished name. We have quite a few number of users here. They're all in many different places. These aren't real users. I used a fake name generator to grab all these. We can also do the same thing for our groups. By changing that to get AD group. Now we have a few more built-in groups, but if you look at the bottom, there are 4 groups down here. Main office staff, main office contractors, remote office staff and contractors. So I think that's everything that I've created. We just need to get these guys out. So we are going to use a file. We're going to call that users.ldif. And we're actually going to use the -r command to specify a filter. So we're exporting users, but we already have users in there. They're built-in user accounts. I think there's probably 4 or 5. Administrators, guests, the Kerberos default account. So we don't need those. So we actually have to use the LDAP search syntax or filter syntax that are included in parentheses. So I'm going to tell it an object class of user and not an object class of computer, because the one computer object that I do have actually has a $user account associated with it. If you want to fight me on that, I can show you in a different video. So we're going to say not a computer. And then we're going to say not name is administrator. Not name is equal to guest. Not name is equal to default account. And not name is equal to KRBTGT. So that should pull roughly 98, I think. We'll see. 99. Let's go ahead and open that file just to make sure. Good. Good. The first account is one of my test accounts. So here are some other things. I'm going to use some more commands in this switch. You could try and import this file, but you're going to run into some issues. Not all of these attributes are writable. So you'll either need to specify the attributes you want to bring over, or omit the ones that aren't writable. So we can kind of go through and look to see what we want to keep. And I'm just going to bring these side by side, and I'm going to scroll through them while I'm adding them. And that was a -L. We want male. And I'm just going to go through these, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, that didn't take too long. Thankfully, I don't have a bunch of items in here. Depending on the size of your production, it might be easier to omit things that are not writable. The easy way to do that is to just take one record and try and import it, and then it'll actually tell you, hey, this is not writable. It stopped at line whatever, and just take away the people, or take away the attributes. But that's all we're going to do there, and we're going to close this out, and we're going to run the command again. And open it up once more. Much thinner, much thinner. Now, one thing that I excluded here that I shouldn't have. We want to keep the manager. I'll close that out and reopen it. Oops. Or I'll export the file again. One thing I didn't realize, this Hudson Gordon, which has a login account of Wilfred_Kling, he is the actual big boss. He didn't have a manager attribute. Everyone else did. So what's going to happen is this person's going to get added. Then this person's going to get added. If a reference, such as manager or member of a group, is not there, actually scratch the member of the group part. That's a read-only attribute. You have to set that on the group side. So if a reference is not there, such as manager or assistant, it's going to bomb out and say, hey, I can't find this person. I can't set the reference. So I deliberately did this in such a way that I made my first person that I created the manager, made the second person I created a manager, and so on and so forth. Now, I probably will run into errors, which is good. I'll show you how to debug it when we get there. Okay, so we're ready to do our next item, which are groups. So I have this little command here. I'm going to actually remove this -M. And I know off the top of my head, I didn't put anything in these attributes except for the name, the CN, and SAM account. Oh, excuse me. Name, CN, display name, and SAM account name. And if I didn't copy and paste, I'm showing you my tricks. This one was a lot easier to save this command and copy and paste. And there were 4 entries, which is correct. I just used my name was equal to *office* because I kept them close to the same name. So these are the only fields that I filled in. That's correct, but I did add members to these groups. So let's go back and add that field. Here we go. We have a bunch of members in the main office. So this will automatically add our members for us. Wonderful. So we'll close that out and save that. One last command, one last thing that we need to port to move over. And that's our OUs. And let's export that out and see what we get. Well, we first got our syntax incorrect. That should be domain controllers. So we have a few. I didn't run this command before, so I'm gonna have to type it in right here. OU and name should be the only ones that we need. So that's all we should need from our production environment. So let's jump over to our sandbox. And we'll just pull our desktop back up here. We have our users, our OUs, and our groups. Now we're going to be doing this in a specific order. We need to get our OUs in place first. The one thing that I'm going into this file and looking for is making sure that our root OUs are there above any of the lower OUs. And that is the case. If it tried to create an OU to which the parent is not there, it's going to throw us a little error. We did look at the import command on importing the schema, but is it different? No, not different at all. The only, well, actually, I take that back. Yeah, it is different. We don't have to. Here I'm saying that, and we do have to change DC equals production, DC is equal to local. So we can just take that same command and see if it works. We'll copy that. We'll save that. We're going to do a -I, and the file is going to be OUs. We'll do our OUs first. It's important because if we create users in OUs that don't exist, it's not going to work. And we're going to use that replace command again. We're going to replace this, the production.local, with Sandbox local. And I didn't test this before. We'll see if it works. And no, it does not work. So that's a good thing to know. And if we read it, it says the object class attribute must be specified. We just run back over to our production. And run these again with object class. Jump to our sandbox. Copy the updated files back over. And I'm going to try this command again. Eight entries modified successfully. So let's jump in and right click on our domain here and say refresh. And what do we see? We see a remote office and a main office. Now the reason I put an underscore before groups is so that it will be at the very top always, no matter what. You do that also with service accounts, OUs, and even service accounts themselves. Boom, they're right at the top no matter what. So what are we going to import next? Well, let's import our users next and what I am going to do with this one is I'm going to remove the -C. Actually, I'm going to open this up in Notepad and rename it because I'm not for sure if it's actually going to rename the actual DNs on the manager and things like that. And I did that wrong. I did sandbox.local. I should have done it like that. Okay, we'll close this out. And I have a feeling we're going to need to open this file again because I have a feeling that the order in some of the managers are not 100% correct. But we'll see. Hey, they were correct. So we have our users in there. So let's go ahead and jump into our groups file. And do the same renaming method. And close this out. Save. And do the import for groups. Now let's jump over to our AD. And let's take a look. Here's in our groups, main office, contractors, with some users in here. Now all of these users are disabled because when I did an import or when I created these, I didn't say enable. There's a little command that says enable. So let's just do that real quick here. I'm just going to get AD user, filter of asterisks, and let's see if it'll let me enable these here. It did it on all of them except for built-in accounts. So if I come back over here and do a little refresh, they're all enabled. Let's see how long this recording is. I think I'm going to leave this here. And I know I said we're going to get into actually doing some of the prerequisites. But I don't want to go too long. I don't want to keep these videos too long. They'll just be hard to edit, hard to upload, and you may not want to watch it all at once. But if you do, I'm going to go right in and record the next portion of it. So just to recap on what we did, we actually exported the schema and extended schema out of production, compared it with a Sandbox, took those changes and imported it into Sandbox. We then exported all the users, groups, and organizational units from production and imported them as well into the Sandbox. The hard part has yet to begun. No, it's not that bad. That just takes your mind a little bit of thinking of, okay, how can I do this? How can I think outside the box to capture all my users in a search filter? So thank you for sticking in this far. If you like the video, please give me that little bitty thumbs up. You can comment. Please be very, very nice to me. Please be nice. Let me know what you think. Want to see more? Want to see less? Open ears. So again, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.